Hello and welcome to another audio analysis. In today's video we're looking at the track Cancer by the American Metalcore band The Devil Wears Prada. Although this track wasn't released as a single, they have just dropped a music video for this particular track, and it was the final song to feature on their 8th studio album Color Decay, which if you've not listened to, I would highly recommend doing so. It did only come out in September of last year, and this was the final track on that album, and it was a beautiful send-off and a beautiful outro to that particular album. And the album itself received very strong acclaim. It was a very powerful return to form for the band, who have kind of been struggling over recent years, but they've really seemed to have found their footing and found a way to really bounce back. So will this track wither away or be full of life? Let's take a look at exactly how it sounds. So already we've got a really interesting mix here. We've got these very soft piano keys mixed with these scratchy, heavy guitars. Now traditionally this wouldn't work on most tracks because it's a very jarring and uneasy sound, but given the title of the track, I really do love this because it shows the two sides of what happens when someone either finds out they've got cancer or a long-term illness or something like that. You have this one side of you that's a bit lost, confused, scared, and you have this other side of you that wants to scream out in anger, and it's this mix of emotions, this uneasiness which they're conveying through the music, which I think is really smart because it just gives the track that certain uneasiness to it. We can already see this song is really tying in that idea of losing a loved one or just really finding out that they've kind of passed, things like that. How routine it feels, like you've fallen through the floor, crushed by another passing. And it's like a train wreck. Every time you lose someone that you love, it really does hit you hard. So again, these screamed vocals really do tie in quite nicely because again, it's that mix of emotions, that aggression that people come out of people when they lose loved ones. Some people get upset, some people get angry. And I like that you've got these backing vocals kind of on the Like I Fell Through the Floor because it's again showing these two sides of how you can deal with grief and loss.
Still, I'm not pretending to know every story and every choice. I'm just some voice below the background noise.
So we've got an interesting lyric in here, to know every story and every choice, and that's because this song does actually revolve around the idea of suicide, which is, given the title, kind of quite, you don't really see it coming until you kind of really understand the story behind it. But obviously mixing in that idea of you don't know what someone's going through, you don't know why they make the choices that they do when they do kind of choose to take their own life, and that's what this song revolves around. Jonathan Gearing, who is the keyboard player for this band, has kind of gone through his life seeing people constantly commit suicide and losing the ones that he loves, and that's why they wanted to make this song, because even in the writing process for this particular album, they lost another person that they cared very dearly about. So it's something they really wanted to cover in a very important topic through a very interesting track.
I hope that it's cancer.
So already we've got this very interesting lyric, I hope that it's cancer. Now that sounds like a crazy thing to put into a track, and it is one of those things that cancer's probably the last thing you want to get, but it's kind of revolving around that idea of they got the news that somebody had passed away, they assumed it was suicide that their friend had passed away from, and they found out he'd actually been dealing with cancer for quite some time, and he said that he kind of actually wished that he had cancer because it would feel more natural than the idea of suicide, and it deals with this the guilt that comes with that feeling of kind of wishing that someone would have cancer because it would mean that they wouldn't be going through suicide, that it's almost like a different end that they come to. So it's quite a sharp and dark, hard-hitting way to really put in as a lyric, but it's so effective in the way that they're kind of conveying this message.
How could I fix that?
we've got this first person, that idea coming in of that guilt. How could I think such a thing? How could I think that I wish it was cancer that my friend passed away from, as opposed to suicide? And one of the lyrics we did have in the chorus as well, I don't need any more things I don't want to talk about. So again, it revolves around that idea of a lot of people when they commit suicide, they don't really open up to anybody. It's usually a shock because nobody sees it coming. You can look at examples like Chester Bennington and Avicii, a variety of other high-profile names, and not just high-profile names. It's something that happens around the world all the time, and it happens on a daily basis, and it's that thing of not being able to talk about problems. So this song is really just trying to encapsulate all the things that go through somebody's mind and the feelings that are kind of left to the people that are left behind after someone does commit suicide.
Daily devastation that I can't validate. What's wrong with you? They'll ask about me. You're done, you're through. Still, I'm.
And I again love this mix of vocals, these softer kind of harmony style vocals in the back, and Micronika's very aggressive screamed vocals. It's great to see them meshing the two together because it's just perfectly emulating the two sides of how you deal with loss, grief, and all those kind of different emotions.
Not pretending to know every story and every choice. I hope that it's cancer and not something else. 'Cause I don't need any more things I don't wanna talk about.
One other thing I really do love is for a metalcore band, they've really dropped the pace on this, and it adds that emotional effect to it. You can see that this is very an emotional subject for the band to talk about, and for most people it is, and because it's directly affected them as a band, because they've lost someone they've cared about, and they like the pacing on the music because it really gives that emotional feel to it. It stops it from being too overloaded, too fast to the point where you really lose that softer side of the track.
I don't need an answer. Care about heaven or hell. I hope that it's cancer. So what does that say about myself?
So again, just continually tying in with these ideas of guilt about how they felt when they found out the news. And I think it's really great to tie that in so heavily, to really add that guilt element, because it is something that often people maybe think themselves. It's one of those songs that people connect to if they've had someone they love that's passed away through suicide. They may have had that occasional thought like, why couldn't it be something else? Why couldn't it feel natural? Because of all the questions that you're eventually left with. And I really love this kind of softer outro to the track, and the idea of the video of candles, kind of lighting for candle for someone that you love that has passed on. So I love the visual effects, and I love that just slow taper out, because obviously it was a great way to really round out the album on a really serious but really important note.
I hope that it's cancer
So interesting note just about the ending of that particular track. That was actually a voicemail that was used. I think it actually became the kind of the starting idea around the actual track itself. That was kind of the little snippet they took and really developed the song by using that little voice clip. And what a powerful song that is. And some of the elements we really need to kind of just quickly brush over again. Certainly though, the mixing, the jarring mix of guitar, heavier guitars with the pianos, really adding that uneasiness, that uncertainty to the track, and really conveying that strong message of kind of how cancer feels, or loss, suicide. And that's the beauty of this track as well. Even if you don't understand the backing behind it, it has got this open-endedness where you can look at something like cancer. You can look at if you've lost somebody through that, when pretty much everybody in the world has been affected by it. You can still draw that from it, even if you haven't had a friend that's gone through the idea of suicide. You've still got that cancer element that you can really draw on, that idea of loss, grief, how you handle it. And I love the mixing of these softer and heavier elements, because it does show those two sides of grief so beautifully. And I just love that they've put it as the last track on the album. Really adds this sweet ending just to the album, and really kind of covers a very important message that really needs to be talked about. And I definitely think if you've never heard this before, you definitely need to give it a couple more listens, because it is a fantastic outro to what was a very, very strong album. And if you haven't heard Color Decay, I'd highly recommend checking that out as well. So that will be everything for today's video, but please let me know your thoughts on the track in the comments section below. And if you want to see more content like this, then please do feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next audio analysis.